A hospital corridor, a terrified teenager facing surgery alone, and a janitor who made a choice that would change two families forever. What Nathan Torres discovered that night wasn't just about showing up when others walk away, it's about seeing people when they feel invisible. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Nathan Torres pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway of St. Michael's Hospital at 9:47 p.m. on a Friday night in November. The surgical wing was quieter than usual. Most elective procedures had wrapped up hours ago. Just the emergency cases and overnight observations remained. Nathan had worked this shift for 3 years, ever since his wife died, and he needed the overnight differential pay to support his 10-year-old daughter Maya. He knew these halls better than he knew his own apartment. Every scuff mark on the floor, every flickering light that maintenance kept promising to fix, every nurse who worked nights, and which ones would slip him leftover birthday cake from the break room. Tonight felt different, though. There was tension in the air. Nathan could feel it as he mopped the floor outside the pre-op holding area. "I don't care what the weather is doing," a sharp voice echoed from inside one of the rooms. "Reschedule your meetings and get on a plane. Your son is having major spinal surgery in the morning." Nathan didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the door was ajar and the voice was loud, angry. "Don't you dare lecture me about priorities, Richard. You're the one who chose to go to Tokyo for a business deal the same week your son is having surgery." A woman's voice this time, equally sharp. A nurse, maybe, or a social worker. "My assistant will be there," the male voice, Richard, responded. "She'll handle everything." "Your assistant? Your 16-year-old son is about to have 8 hours of surgery to try to restore function to his legs, and you're sending an assistant?" There was silence, then Richard's voice, colder now. "I've made my decision. The surgery is necessary. I've hired the best surgeons. I've paid for everything. That's what a parent does. The rest is just sentiment." "The rest is called being present," the woman said, her voice thick with disgust. "But I suppose that's too much to ask." The call ended. Nathan heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly moved his cart down the hall, pretending to be focused on mopping. The woman who emerged was Dr. Lisa Patel, one of the surgical coordinators Nathan had seen around. Her face was flushed with anger. She noticed Nathan and seemed to consider him for a moment. "You hear any of that?" Nathan hesitated. "Some. Sorry, wasn't trying to—" "It's fine," she sighed heavily, leaning against the wall. "That was William Chen's father, the boy in room 412. He's having spinal fusion surgery tomorrow morning, trying to repair damage from a car accident 6 months ago. The kid's been paralyzed from the waist down. This surgery is his only chance to walk again, and his father can't be bothered to show up." "What about his mom?" Nathan asked before he could stop himself. "Dead. 3 years ago. Cancer. It's just Richard Chen and William, and Richard's apparently too busy closing a deal in Tokyo to be here for his son's most important day." Dr. Patel pushed off the wall. "The kid's alone, 16 years old and terrified and completely alone. His father's assistant is supposed to arrive in the morning, but she's not family. She's not—" She broke off, shaking her head. "Sorry, you don't need to hear this. Long night." She walked away, leaving Nathan standing in the hallway with his mop, something uncomfortable twisting in his chest. He shouldn't get involved. It wasn't his business. He was a janitor. His job was to clean floors and empty trash cans and remain invisible to the doctors and patients who inhabited this world. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. A 16-year-old kid, alone, facing surgery that would determine whether he'd ever walk again. No parent holding his hand, no one telling him it would be okay. Nathan knew what that felt like. Not the surgery part, but the alone part. He'd been 17 when his own father died. His mother had already been gone for years. He'd faced the funeral, the aftermath, the grief, all of it alone. He remembered how terrifying that loneliness had been, how desperately he'd wanted someone, anyone, to just stay with him. Before he could talk himself out of it, Nathan walked to room 412. The door was partially open. Inside, a teenage boy sat in a hospital bed, staring at the wall. He was thin, with dark hair that fell across his forehead. His legs were covered by a blanket, but Nathan could see the outline of the braces beneath. A wheelchair sat folded in the corner. Nathan knocked gently on the doorframe. The boy's head turned. His expression was guarded, defensive. If you're here to prep me for surgery, I already did all that. If you're here to ask how I'm feeling, I'm fine. If you're here because my father sent you to babysit me, you can leave. I'm not here for any of that, Nathan said quietly. I'm the janitor. I was just making my rounds and I thought... He stopped, unsure how to explain. I heard you might be alone tonight, before your surgery tomorrow. William's jaw tightened. So? I'm 16. I don't need someone to hold my hand. Okay, Nathan nodded. That's fair. But if you change your mind, I'll be around, working the overnight shift. I'm Nathan, by the way. He started to leave. Why do you care? William's voice stopped him. It wasn't angry, just confused, tired. Nathan turned back. Because I know what it's like to be alone when you're stared, and nobody should have to feel that way if they don't have to. William stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked away. You can come in if you want. Not like I'm sleeping anyway. Nathan entered the room, leaving his cart in the hallway. He pulled up the visitor's chair and sat down, keeping a respectful distance from the bed. So, Nathan said, William, right? Will. Nobody calls me William except my father. Will. Okay. So, Will, tomorrow's the big day. Yeah. Will's hands fidgeted with the blanket. 8 hours of them cutting into my spine, installing hardware, trying to reconnect nerves that might be too damaged to work. 70% chance of regaining some function, 30% chance of nothing changing, 5% chance of making things worse. You've got the statistics memorized. I've had 6 months to memorize them. 6 months of physical therapy and consultations and my father's lectures about staying positive and not giving up. Easy for him to say. He's the one who can't feel his legs. The accident, Nathan said carefully. How'd it happen? Will was quiet for so long Nathan thought he wouldn't answer. Then, we were driving home from a debate tournament. I was in the back seat. My father was driving and on a conference call. He ran a red light, never even saw the truck coming. He walked away with a bruised rib. I woke up in the hospital paralyzed. The pain in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. And he blames himself, Nathan guessed. He doesn't say it, but yeah, I think so. That's probably why he can't be here. Too guilty, too uncomfortable. Easier to be in Tokyo closing deals than sitting in a hospital room looking at what he did to me. That's not fair to you. Nothing about this is fair, Will said flatly. Then he looked at Nathan. Why are you really here? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. You're a kid who shouldn't be alone tonight. That makes you somebody. Will's throat worked. For a moment, Nathan thought he might cry. But he pulled himself together, that defensive wall going back up. Well, you've done your good deed. You can go now. I could, Nathan agreed, or I could stick around, keep you company. I've got to work anyway. Might as well work in here. Your floor could use mopping. Despite himself, Will smiled slightly. My floor is fine. You sure? I'm very thorough. I'm sure. All right then. Nathan settled back in the chair. So what do you want to talk about? Or we could not talk. I'm fine with silence too. Will studied him with those sharp, tired eyes. Do you have kids? A daughter, Maya. She's 10. Is she here, at the hospital? No, she's with my sister tonight. I work overnight shifts, 4 nights a week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That sounds terrible. It pays the bills. And it means I'm home during the day when Maya gets back from school. We make it work. What about your wife? She died 3 years ago. Cancer. Will's expression softened. I'm sorry. Thank you. It was hard. Still is some days. But Maya and I, we've got each other. We're a team. My mom died 3 years ago too, Will said quietly. Also cancer. She was the one who understood me, who actually listened when I talked. My father, he loves me, I think. But he doesn't know how to show it. He just throws money at problems and expects that to fix everything. Money helps, but it's not the same as showing up. No, it's not. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Will said, "Do you think the surgery will work?" "I don't know," Nathan answered honestly. "But I think you're brave as hell for trying. 70% chance of improvement is pretty good odds. Or 30% chance of staying like this forever. Glass half empty kind of guy? Realist kind of guy. Fair enough." Nathan leaned forward. "Can I tell you something my daughter taught me?" "Okay." "Last year, Maya had to do this talent show at school. She wanted to sing, but she's terrified of performing in front of people. She almost backed out, but then she said something that stuck with me. She said, 'Daddy, I'm going to be scared either way. I can be scared and not try, or I can be scared and try. At least if I try, there's a chance it'll be good.'" Did she do it? She did, and she was terrified. Her voice shook the whole time, but she finished the song. And when she was done, she had the biggest smile on her face. Not because she was perfect, but because she tried despite being scared. "That's very inspiring," Will said, but there was no sarcasm in his voice, just exhaustion. "The point is, you're being brave tomorrow. Whether the surgery works or not, you're trying. That matters." Will nodded slowly. "I should probably try to sleep. Surgery's at 6 a.m. "Right, I'll get out of your way." "Nathan?" "Yeah?" "Thanks. For staying. Even just for a little while." "Anytime, kid." Nathan went back to his cart and continued his rounds, but every hour he found himself circling back to room 412. Sometimes Will was asleep, sometimes he was awake, staring at the ceiling. Around midnight, Nathan knocked again. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." Will's voice was tight with anxiety. "I keep thinking about what happens if I wake up and nothing's changed, or worse, if I wake up and something went wrong and I'm worse than before." "Can I come in?" "Yeah." Nathan returned to the chair. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Nathan said, "You want to know something? When my wife got diagnosed, the hardest part wasn't the treatment or even watching her get sick. It was the waiting. Waiting for test results, waiting to see if treatments worked, waiting to find out if we'd have more time or if it was running out." "How did you deal with it?"
Not well at first. I tried to control everything I could control. I researched treatments, I made schedules, I kept everything organized. Like, if I just managed things perfectly, I could somehow change the outcome. Did it work? No, because the outcome was never in my control. The only thing I could control was how I showed up for her, whether I was present, whether I made the time we had meaningful, even when I was scared. Are you saying I should accept that I might not walk again? I'm saying you can't control what happens in that operating room tomorrow, but you can control how you face it. You can go in terrified and alone, or you can go in knowing you tried everything. And you can know that whatever happens, you're not alone. Not tonight anyway. Will's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I don't want to be the kid everyone pities. I don't want to lose any more of myself than I already have." "I know. And I'm so angry at my father for not being here. I'm angry that he can't even face me. I'm angry that he's the reason I'm in this situation and he gets to just run away to Tokyo." "You have every right to be angry. But being angry doesn't change anything, does it?" "No, but it's valid anyway. You don't have to forgive him just because being angry is hard." Will wiped his eyes roughly. "Sorry, I don't usually fall apart like this." "You're not falling apart. You're being human. There's a difference." They talked through the night, about everything and nothing. Will told Nathan about his school, about how he used to run track before the accident, about his debate team and his friends who'd slowly stopped visiting once the reality of his paralysis set in. Nathan told Will about Maya's obsession with drawing, about their tiny apartment, about learning to cook after his wife died because he'd never had to before. Around 3 a.m., Will finally dozed off. Nathan sat in the chair, watching the boy sleep, and made a decision.
He pulled out his phone and texted his sister. "Can you keep Maya an extra day? Something came up at work." She responded immediately. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just need to be here. I'll explain later." "Of course. Maya's fine. Take care of whatever you need to." Nathan settled back in the chair. His shift technically ended at 6, which was when Will's surgery started. But he wasn't leaving. He'd call in sick for tomorrow night's shift if he had to. Right now, this kid needed someone, and Nathan was going to be that someone. At 5 a.m., the pre-op team arrived. Nurses checking vitals, anesthesiologists going over procedures. They gave Nathan odd looks. Janitors didn't usually camp out in patient rooms, but no one said anything. Dr. Patel appeared at 5:30. She looked surprised to see Nathan still there. "You stayed," she said. "Yeah." She smiled slightly. "Good." Will was awake now, groggy and anxious. The nurses had given him a mild sedative, but it hadn't done much. "Nathan?" Will's voice was small. "Right here, buddy." "I'm scared." "I know, that's okay." "Will you—" Will stopped, looking embarrassed. "Never mind." "Will I what?" "Will you come with me to the operating room, as far as they'll let you?" Nathan's throat tightened. "Absolutely."
They wheeled Will toward the surgical wing at 5:50 a.m. Nathan walked alongside the gurney, his hand resting near Will's shoulder. The hallways were bright with fluorescent lights, busy with early morning medical staff. At the doors to the OR, they had to stop. "This is as far as you can go," one of the nurses said gently to Nathan. Nathan looked down at Will. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "You've got this," Nathan said firmly. "You're the bravest kid I've met, and when you wake up, I'll be right here waiting, I promise." "You don't have to. I'll be here." Will nodded, blinking back tears. "Thank you for everything." They wheeled him through the double doors. Nathan stood there watching until Will disappeared from view. Dr. Patel appeared at his elbow. "You should go home, get some rest. The surgery will take 8 hours minimum. I'm staying." "Nathan, I promised him I'd be here when he wakes up. I'm staying." She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, there's a surgical waiting room on the 3rd floor. I'll make sure you get updates." Nathan spent the next 8 hours in that waiting room. He dozed occasionally in the uncomfortable chairs. He drank terrible coffee from the vending machine. He called his sister to check on Maya, explaining briefly that he was helping a patient and would be home late. "You have the biggest heart," his sister said warmly. "That kid is lucky you were there." Other families came and went. They gave Nathan curious looks. He was still in his janitor's uniform, out of place among the worried parents and spouses. But he didn't care. At 2:15 p.m., Dr. Patel found him. "The surgery is done," she said. "It went well. Dr. Morrison was able to repair more of the damage than she expected. Will's in recovery now." "And? Will he walk?" "It's too early to tell. The swelling needs to go down. We'll start physical therapy in a few weeks, but the prognosis is good, better than we hoped." Nathan's legs felt weak with relief. "Can I see him?" "He'll be out for another hour or two, but yes, once he's awake, you can see him." Nathan waited. He was exhausted, running on no sleep and nothing but vending machine food, but he'd made a promise. At 4 p.m., a nurse came to get him. "He's awake, groggy, but awake. He's asking for Nathan." Will looked small in the recovery room bed, tubes and monitors everywhere. His eyes were half closed, but they focused when Nathan approached. "Hey, kid," Nathan said softly. "You made it." "Nathan," Will's voice was slurred from the anesthesia. "You stayed." "I told you I would." "My father's assistant came. She's here somewhere. She brought flowers." "That's nice." "But you're the one who stayed." Will's eyes filled with tears. "You're not even my family. I'm just someone who cares. That's enough." Will reached out his hand.
Nathan took it, holding it gently. "Thank you," Will whispered. "Thank you for not leaving me alone." Nathan stayed until Will fell back asleep. Only then did he slip out, heading home to his own daughter who'd been patient while her father helped someone else's child. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. 3 days later, Nathan returned to work. He'd taken 2 sick days to catch up on sleep and spend time with Maya. He wasn't sure what to expect when he went back. Would Will even remember him? Would the boy's father have returned? On his first night back, Nathan found himself on the surgical wing again. Room 412 had a new patient. Will had been moved to a regular recovery room on the 4th floor. Nathan took a chance and went looking for him during his break. He found Will in room 428. The boy was sitting up in bed, looking more alert. His father's assistant, an efficient-looking woman in her 40s, was sitting in the corner on her phone. "Nathan!" Will's face lit up when he saw him. "I was hoping you'd come by." "Hey, how are you feeling?" "Sore, exhausted, but good. The doctors say the surgery went really well. They're optimistic." "That's great, Will. Really great." "Could you—" Will glanced at the assistant. "Could we talk alone?" The assistant looked up, startled. "I'm supposed to stay with you, your father's orders." "Please, Margaret, just for a few minutes." She hesitated, then stood. "All right, I'll be right outside if you need anything." Once she was gone, Nathan gestured Nathan closer. "My father called yesterday," he said quietly, "from Tokyo. He asked how the surgery went. That's it. Didn't apologize for missing it. Didn't say he wished he'd been here. Just wanted a status update, like I'm some business project he's managing remotely." Nathan sat in the chair Margaret had vacated. "I'm sorry." "I'm used to it. He's been like this since my mom died, throwing himself into work, avoiding anything emotional. I get it, I guess. He doesn't know how to deal with grief, but neither do I, and I'm 16. You shouldn't have to deal with it alone." "I have Margaret." Will's tone was affectionate but distant. "She's nice, but she's paid to be here." "What about other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles?" "My mom's parents died before I was born. My dad's parents are in China. We don't see them much. No siblings, no aunts or uncles that I'm close to. It's just me and my father. And he's never really here, even when he's physically present." Nathan's heart ached for this kid. All the money in the world, the best medical care, a recovery room that probably cost thousands per day, and none of it mattered because he was fundamentally alone. "Listen," Nathan said. "I know I'm just the janitor. I know I'm not family, but if you need someone to talk to, someone to visit, I'm around. I work 4 nights a week. I can stop by when I'm on shift." Will's eyes filled with tears. "You do that?" "Yeah, kid, I would." "Why? You barely know me." "Because everyone deserves to have someone show up for them. And right now, I can be that someone for you." Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan visited Will every night he worked. They'd talk for an hour during Nathan's break, sometimes about serious things, Will's fears about whether he'd walk again, his anger at his father, his loneliness. Sometimes about nothing, movies they'd seen, books they'd read, Maya's latest drawing adventures. Will started physical therapy. It was brutal. The therapists were pushing him hard, trying to rebuild strength and test nerve function. Some days Will could wiggle his toes. Other days, he felt nothing. "It's a process," the therapists kept saying. "Recovery isn't linear." But Will was impatient. He'd been patient for 6 months already. He wanted results. He wanted his life back. 2 weeks after the surgery, Richard Chen finally came home from Tokyo. Nathan heard about it from Will during one of their late-night visits. "He's back," Will said flatly. "Showed up this afternoon with gifts, a new laptop, a designer wheelchair, like that makes up for missing the most important surgery of my life." "Did you tell him how you felt?" "What's the point? He'll just say he was doing what was necessary for business, that his work supports us, that I should be grateful for the opportunities his success provides." Will's voice was bitter. "He doesn't get it.
I don't care about the money. I just wanted my dad. The next night, Nathan was mopping the floor outside Will's room when he heard raised voices. "You're being unreasonable, William," Richard Chen's voice, cold and clipped. "I'm being unreasonable? I almost died in an accident that was your fault, spent 6 months paralyzed, went through 8 hours of surgery alone, and I'm the one being unreasonable for wanting my father to actually act like a father? I had critical business. There's always critical business. There's always something more important than me. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that a janitor I'd never met stayed with me through that entire night before surgery because he cared more about whether I was scared than my own father did." There was silence. Then Richard's voice, dangerous. "What janitor?" Nathan's stomach dropped. He shouldn't have been listening. He should walk away. But before he could, the door opened. Richard Chen stood there. He was tall, sharp-featured, expensively dressed even in casual clothes, his eyes locked on Nathan with laser focus. "You," Richard said, "you're the janitor my son is talking about." "Yes, sir," Nathan said, straightening. "You stayed with him before his surgery." "Yes, sir." Richard's jaw worked. For a moment, Nathan thought he might get fired. But then Richard's expression crumbled just slightly before he pulled it back together. "Come inside," Richard said. "Both of you. We need to talk." Nathan didn't want to. This felt like crossing a line. But Will was looking at him with pleading eyes, so he followed Richard back into the room. Richard stood by the window, his back to them. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but strained. "I was in Tokyo because I couldn't face being here. William is right. The accident was my fault. I was on a conference call when I should have been paying attention to the road. My son paid the price for my negligence. And I couldn't—" His voice broke slightly. "I couldn't sit in that hospital room and look at what I'd done to him." Will stared at his father's back, shocked. "I thought the money would help. The best doctors, the best facility, the best equipment. I thought if I could fix the problem with resources, that would be enough. I didn't understand that what he needed was me, his father, just present." He turned to face them. His eyes were red. "I failed him. And you," he looked at Nathan, "a stranger, a man I'd never met. You gave my son what I should have given him. You were there when he was scared. You stayed when he needed someone. You showed him he mattered." "Mr. Chen," Nathan started. "No, let me finish." Richard took a breath. "I've been a terrible father. I can make excuses about grief and work and not knowing how to cope. But the truth is, I abandoned my son when he needed me most. And I don't know how to fix that." "Dad," Will said quietly, "I don't need expensive gifts. I don't need a fancy wheelchair. I just need you to be here, to actually see me." Richard crossed the room and sat on the edge of Will's bed. For the first time in 6 months, he took his son's hand. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Will started crying. So did Richard. Nathan quietly slipped out of the room, giving them privacy for a moment that should have happened months ago. Dr. Patel found Nathan in the hallway. "I heard what happened," she said. "That was good work." "I didn't do anything." "You showed up. You cared. You gave that boy someone to lean on when his father couldn't. That's not nothing, Nathan. That's everything." 3 weeks after the surgery, Will took his first steps. It was assisted, parallel bars, leg braces, 2 physical therapists spotting him, but he moved his legs. He bore weight. He walked 4 steps before his strength gave out. Nathan wasn't there to see it. He heard about it from Will later. "I thought about you," Will told him during their visit that night. "When I took those steps, I thought about what you said, about your daughter in the talent show, being scared but trying anyway. That's what got me through. I'm proud of you, kid." "My father was there," Will added. He's been at every therapy session since we talked. He's actually trying now to be present, to be a dad. That's good, really good. But I don't want you to think that means I don't need you anymore, because I do. You've become important to me. Nathan's throat tightened. You're important to me too. Over the following months, Will's recovery progressed. Some days were good. He'd walk 20 feet with braces. Some days were bad. The pain was too much, or his legs wouldn't respond. But he kept working, kept pushing. Richard Chen changed too. Not overnight, not perfectly, but he started showing up. He attended therapy sessions. He had dinner with Will every night he was in town. He cut back his travel. He started actually talking to his son, not just about logistics and schedules, but about feelings and fears and hopes. And Nathan continued to visit. Not every night anymore. Will didn't need him as desperately now that his father was present. But once or twice a week, Nathan would stop by during his break. They'd talk. Sometimes Will needed advice, sometimes he just needed a friend. 6 months after the surgery, Will was discharged from the hospital. He could walk with braces and a cane. The doctors were calling it a success. He'd regained far more function than they'd initially predicted. On Will's last day at the hospital, Richard Chen asked Nathan to come to the room. "I want to thank you properly," Richard said. "I've set up a trust fund in your name, enough to pay for your daughter's college education and then some. It's the least I can do for what you did for my son." Nathan was stunned. "Mr. Chen, I can't accept that." "Yes, you can. You gave Will something invaluable when I failed him. Let me give you something in return. Please." Nathan looked at Will, who was nodding encouragingly. "It's not about the money, Nathan," Will said. "It's about my dad wanting to say thank you in the way he knows how. Let him do this." So Nathan accepted, his mind reeling. Maya's college fund, fully funded. The financial stress he'd been carrying for years, gone just like that. But more than the money, something else happened that day. "I want to stay in touch," Will said, "if that's okay with you. I know you have your own life, your own daughter, but I'd like to, I don't know, keep being friends?" "I'd like that. A lot." And they did. Over the next 2 years, Nathan and Will maintained their friendship. Will would text Nathan updates about his progress, the day he walked without his cane, the day he ran for the first time, the day he rejoined the debate team. Nathan would send photos of Maya's artwork, stories about her school performances, updates on their life. They met for lunch once a month. Sometimes just the two of them. Sometimes Nathan brought Maya, and she and Will would draw together while Nathan and Richard talked. Richard and Nathan had formed an unlikely friendship too, the CEO and the janitor. They had almost nothing in common on paper, but they both loved their kids. They both knew what it meant to lose a spouse. They both understood that being a parent meant showing up even when it was hard. When Maya turned 12, Will came to her birthday party. He brought his father. The two of them sat in Nathan's small apartment eating cake and watching Maya open presents, looking completely out of place and completely comfortable at the same time. "This is nice," Richard said to Nathan as they cleaned up afterward. "Simple, real, nothing like the parties I used to throw for Will when he was this age." "What were those like?" "Catered, expensive, full of business associates' children who Will barely knew. I thought I was giving him the best, but this," he gestured around the modest apartment, "this is what childhood should look like. Love and laughter and people who care." 2 years after the surgery, Will returned to track. Not competitively, his legs couldn't handle that yet, but he ran for himself, for the joy of movement, for the proof that he'd survived. Nathan was there the first time Will ran a full mile. So was Richard, so was Maya, cheering from the sidelines. When Will crossed the finish line, he was crying and grinning at the same time. "I did it," he said, breathless. "I actually did it." "You did," Nathan said, pulling him into a hug. "You did." That evening, Richard invited them all to dinner at his house. It was the first time Nathan and Maya had been there, a massive estate that made Nathan's apartment look like a closet. But despite the size and expense, it felt like home.
There were photos on the walls, Will and his mother, Will and Richard, newer photos of Will's recovery. The kitchen was lived in, the living room was comfortable. Over dinner, Richard made an announcement. "I've been thinking about what Nathan did for Will, how he showed up when our family needed help, and I've decided to do something about it." He pulled out papers from his briefcase. "I'm establishing a foundation, the Chen Foundation for supporting hospital staff. It will provide scholarships for the children of hospital employees, janitors, cafeteria workers, nurses' aides, security guards, the people who keep hospitals running but are often overlooked." He looked at Nathan. "You showed me that kindness doesn't come from wealth or status. It comes from character, from choosing to see people who are usually invisible. I want to make sure people like you, people who work night shifts to support their families, have opportunities to give their children better futures." Nathan was speechless. "The first scholarship recipient," Richard continued, "will be Maya Torres, full ride to any college she chooses, but there will be hundreds more. We're starting in San Francisco, but I want to expand nationally." "Richard, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me run it. Be on the board. Help me identify families who need support. You know that world better than I ever will." Nathan looked around the table. At Richard, who'd gone from absent father to actively present. At Will, who'd gone from paralyzed and hopeless to running and thriving. At Maya, whose eyes were wide with the possibility of a future she'd never dared dream about. "Yes," Nathan said, "I'll help." 3 years after that night in the hospital, Nathan's life looked completely different. He still worked at the hospital, but he'd been promoted to facility supervisor. Better pay, day shifts, weekends off. And he spent his evenings working with the Chen Foundation, reviewing applications, visiting families, helping distribute scholarships. Maya was thriving. She'd won an art competition. She was talking about studying graphic design in college. She had friends, confidence, a future bright with possibility. Will was 18 now, preparing for college himself. He'd been accepted to Stanford with plans to study neuroscience. He wanted to research spinal injuries to help other people like himself find recovery. On the 3-year anniversary of Will's surgery, they all gathered at the hospital. Dr. Patel was there. So were several of the nurses who'd cared for Will. The hospital had agreed to name their new pediatric recovery wing after Will's mother, the Eleanor Chen Wing. During the dedication ceremony, Will gave a speech. 3 years ago, I was in the darkest place of my life. I was 16, paralyzed, alone, and terrified. I'd lost faith in people. I'd lost faith in myself. I didn't believe in kindness anymore." He looked out at the crowd. "And then, a janitor I'd never met knocked on my door. He sat with me through the scariest night of my life. He stayed when everyone else left. He showed me that people still cared, that I still mattered." Will's eyes found Nathan in the audience. "Nathan Torres taught me that heroism doesn't look like what we see in movies. It looks like showing up. It looks like staying. It looks like seeing someone who feels invisible and making them feel seen." He didn't have to care about a scared, angry teenager, but he did. And that changed everything. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the ceremony, Nathan and Will stood together in the new wing, looking at the plaque bearing Eleanor Chen's name. "Your mom would be proud of you," Nathan said. "I think she'd be proud of both of us, and grateful to you for being there when I needed someone. I was just doing what felt right. That's what makes it matter. You didn't do it for recognition or reward. You did it because you saw a kid who needed help, and you helped." They stood there quietly for a moment. Then Will said, "You know what the crazy thing is? That night, I thought my life was over. I was so sure the surgery wouldn't work, that I'd be paralyzed forever, that nothing good would ever happen again. And now? Now I'm walking, running, going to Stanford, living a life I didn't think I'd get to have. And I have a second family, you and Maya.
I have a father who actually shows up. I have purpose. I want to help other people the way you helped me.
You're going to do amazing things, Will. We both are, together. The Chen Foundation is just the start. We are going to help so many families. And they did. Over the following years, the Chen Foundation grew. They funded college scholarships for 800 students. They provided emergency financial assistance to hospital workers facing crisis. They created support programs for families dealing with medical trauma. Nathan eventually left his hospital job to work at the foundation full-time. Richard made him co-director, equal partners in running the organization. They traveled together to hospitals across the country, meeting families, distributing aid, building programs. Maya grew up and went to art school on her scholarship. She thrived there, eventually landing a job at a major design firm. She never forgot that her opportunities came from her father's kindness to a stranger. Will graduated from Stanford and went to medical school. He specialized in physical medicine and rehabilitation, working specifically with spinal injury patients. He was brilliant, compassionate, and never forgot what it felt like to be the scared patient in the hospital bed. 10 years after that night, Nathan stood on a stage accepting a humanitarian award for his work with the Chen Foundation. The ballroom was full of people, donors, board members, families they'd helped. In his acceptance speech, Nathan talked about that night. 10 years ago, I was a janitor working the night shift. I had no authority, no status, no particular skills beyond mopping floors and emptying trash cans. But I saw a teenage boy who was alone and scared, and I made a choice to stay. He paused, looking out at the audience. That choice changed my life. It changed Will's life. It changed Richard's life. And through the foundation, it's changed hundreds of other lives. All because of one simple decision: to see someone who felt invisible. To stay when it would have been easier to walk away, to show up when it mattered. He found Will and Richard in the audience. I didn't save Will that night. He saved himself through courage and hard work and refusing to give up. But I was there. I witnessed it. And sometimes that's all people need. Someone to witness their struggle. Someone to say, I see you. You matter. You're not alone. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. 15 years after that night, Nathan was invited back to the hospital for another dedication. They were naming their night shift employee break room in his honor, the Nathan Torres Rest Area. A place for people like he'd been to take a moment, to rest, to remember that their work mattered. The plaque read, "In honor of Nathan Torres, who taught us that heroism looks like showing up, that kindness means staying, that everyone deserves to be seen." Nathan stood there with tears in his eyes, Maya on one side and Will on the other. Both of them were adults now. Maya was married with a baby on the way. Will was engaged to a fellow doctor he'd met during residency. Richard stood nearby with his own new wife. He'd finally allowed himself to move forward after years of grief. They'd all become family. Not through blood, but through choice, through staying, through showing up. Thank you, Will said quietly to Nathan, for everything, for that night and every day since. Thank you for letting me be part of your life, both of you. Nathan looked at Will and Richard. You gave me purpose too. That night, Nathan walked the halls of the hospital one more time. Past the surgical wing where he'd mopped floors, past the room where he'd met Will, past the waiting room where he'd spent 8 hours waiting for surgery results. It all looked the same, but everything was different. Because one choice, one decision to stay with a scared teenager had rippled outward in ways Nathan never could have imagined. It had healed a broken father-son relationship. It had created a foundation that helped thousands. It had given Nathan himself a new career, a new purpose, a new family.
all from one night of showing up. As Nathan left the hospital, he thought about all the people working night shifts right now. The janitors and security guards and cafeteria workers. The ones who were usually invisible. And he hoped they knew they weren't, that their work mattered, that they had the power to change lives just by choosing to see the people around them, just by staying when others walked away. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be present, to witness someone's pain and say, "You're not alone." That's what Nathan had done for Will 15 years ago, and Will had spent every day since doing the same for his patients. And Maya would do the same through her art, creating beauty that made people feel seen. And the cycle would continue, rippling outward, touching more lives than any of them could count. All because a janitor knocked on a door and asked a scared teenager if he wanted company. All because a boy said yes. All because two people chose connection over convenience, presence over absence, love over indifference. If this story reminded you that showing up matters, that kindness creates ripples, that we all have the power to change lives through simple acts of compassion, share it. Because somewhere right now, someone is alone and scared. Someone needs a person to stay. Someone needs to be seen. And you might be exactly the person who can show up for them. Subscribe for more stories that prove heroism looks like presence, courage looks like caring, and love looks like staying when everyone else walks away. Sometimes all it takes is one night, one choice, one person brave enough to knock on a door and say, "You're not alone." Sometimes that changes everything.